So Dean, how did you basically get started in wrestling in the first place?
So I got started in wrestling. When I was 15, I joined a gym with my best friend who's also a wrestler, and the building was a three-story building. The gym was on the top floor, and after being there for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, it was announced that a wrestling school was opening on the second floor. So my best friend dragged me along that first day, and yeah, just went from there basically.
So whereabouts was it? I believe you grew up in Stoke-on-Trent.
In
Was
Stoke-on-Trent,
it?
in Hanley,
In-
city centre.
In Hanley, yeah. And was it? There were a few other wrestlers from the area at the same time, as well. Robbie Dynamite and Mikey Whiplash sort of came from that area as well. Were they people that you grew up wrestling with?
So Robbie Dynamite I've known since I was 8 years old, and we lived 10 houses away from each other on Harrison Bank, and yeah, we just always used to play wrestling. We always used to watch wrestling together. Even from an early age, we used to go to wrestling shows together in Hamley and in Rill. And obviously, Robbie's a year older than me, and he was like a big influence to me because he always seemed to have like a natural knowledge of professional wrestling, and he used to have tapes from all over the world, so we used to watch them together. And then after we'd both been training at the school for about 6 months, Mikey Whiplash came along and joined the school.
That's fine. So, who inspired you to get into wrestling in the first place? Because you've got your training academy here, so
Yeah.
I presume people here have seen your work and wanted to come and be like you. But who was it who inspired you to get into it?
Well, I'd say watching wrestling from about the age of 6 with my granddad. My granddad was like a really big wrestling fan. He was the one that introduced me to wrestling. I wouldn't say it was like a single person that got me into wrestling. I'd say it was just wrestling on a whole. The larger than life characters, the good guys versus the bad guys. And even at an early age, I really appreciated the technical ability of certain wrestlers.
What wrestlers in particular did you look up to?
Well, I was introduced to American wrestling first. So like people like Mr. Perfect. Like Mr. Perfect for me was, even though he was a bad guy, when he used to do the perfect plex, it was like a move that I really appreciated. I don't know what it was about the move, but it used to be my favourite move as a kid.
And would you say that watching him has sort of influenced your own style, or is it been more sort of the high flying sort of style that you've become known for?
Obviously, in the UK we have our classic British wrestling style, and there's not really that many wrestlers in the UK that can do that these days. So it's been passed on to me by older British wrestlers, and I want to keep that style alive. But then I also know that wrestling's evolving, and I think this day and age you have to be good at everything in wrestling. You can't be like a one-dimensional wrestler. You have to be able to do everything, and for myself really, I want to be that type of wrestler where I can do pretty much anything in the ring.
And how do you think that wrestling has evolved over the last few years? And would you say it's improved, or would you just say it's different now?
Oh, definitely improved. Like if you go to any shows in the UK right now, they're at like the highest standard in the world. That's why British wrestling is so hot right now. Any show you go to in the world, it's just in the UK is the highest in the world for sure.
Yeah, and of the current scene at the moment, the UK independent scene in particular, that's sort of, obviously it's been going a while, but it seems to have just absolutely taken off in the last few years. And you currently wrestle for PCW, where you're a champion.
Yes.
Are there any particular up and coming stars on that circuit who we should really be looking out for as well?
There's so many. Obviously you got guys like Zack Sabre Jr. has just won the New Japan Cup. You got Ospreay, who won the Best of the Super Juniors. Like British wrestlers are not only just taking over like the UK and like making it what it is, they really are taking over the world. Like I go to Japan myself and wrestle over there, and just going to a different country just makes you realise how good the wrestling is in the UK right now.
That's right. And sort of maybe in the last week or so, we perhaps have seen not the most positive side of the UK wrestling with what happened with Five Star. I know PCW were sort of trying to get that contract for the TV in the first place, and it didn't work out. What do you make with everything that's happened there?
Obviously being like in PCW since 2011, like I am one of the original PCW guys, and anything that happens good for PCW like makes me really happy. I think it should have been PCW's from the very beginning. I've mentioned that in previous interviews, and obviously now you've seen the reaction like on Twitter and stuff like that. My Twitter has blown up today just for the fact that everybody wants to see PCW on that TV channel, and I do think it's like it's a full-on British wrestling promotion, and if you go to a PCW show you come away thinking, wow, that was a really good wrestling show.
And I believe they're also for people who didn't manage to get to the shows in Manchester or Blackburn or wherever. They're PCW are actually offering the chance to come down to the show at Guildhall.
Yeah, just PCW, their number one aim is to please the fans, and this is just typical of PCW really. I do love the company. I always say like All Star Wrestling is my full-time company, but PCW always feels like my home company, and I really do love the company, and if they do get this deal it will be big for not only PCW but for the British wrestling scene.
So tell me a little bit more about All Star Wrestling. That is, your own promotion, as you say there. How did it come about you wanting to start your own promotion?
Home promotion.
Sorry.
Yeah. So when I used to wrestle in Stoke, it was like once a month. I had a job in a factory at the time, but me and Robbie Dynamite, these massive wrestlers, and they were like the professional guys that we wanted to be like. So we got in touch with promoter Brian Dixon. We got like a tryout match before the show, and from the age of 17 I've wrestled as a full-time professional for All Star Wrestling between 200 and 250 times a year for All Star Wrestling. It really is like the biggest touring company in the UK right now.
Well, and you mentioned you used to wrestle in Stoke-on-Trent, and it was only like once a month. Did you feel like you had to move away from that area to get your chance? Do you think more could be done for up-and-coming wrestlers in that area maybe?
It was just the way it was at the time. Obviously when I started it was the year 2000. There wasn't really that much like, I didn't have a mobile phone, there was no real internet then, so everything was just kind of like take what you can get, you know what I mean? And literally like until I started working for All Star I didn't really understand how busy the schedule was, but then as soon as you get on there and you looked at your date sheet, it was insane. It was pretty much like wrestling so many days a year, sometimes twice a day. Yeah, it was definitely the place to be. It has been for the last 50 years. It used to be on TV when the World of Sport was going. All Star Wrestling came and they were doing shows on that. So it's been the biggest company in the country for 50 years. So why wouldn't you want to wrestle there?
Absolutely. And you mentioned there you wrestle with them. You say you've wrestled in Japan. You did stuff with TNA as well. What would you say have been the highlights of your career? I'm sure there are quite a few to choose from.
There's so many highlights. When me and Rob used to watch wrestling tapes, Japanese wrestling was always like a favourite of ours. It was always something that we used to shop about for and find the VHS tapes if we could. So obviously I got to wrestle Justin from the Liger in 2013, which was for PCW, and because of that I ended up going to Japan in 2014, which was an absolute dream come true. Yeah, so Japan will always be like one of the biggest highlights of my career for sure.
Fantastic. And what does the future hold for you as a wrestler? Have you got any exciting dates and stuff lined up?
Yeah, I've got some big stuff coming up. Obviously I've been wrestling for 18 years now. It's a long time. So my number one concern and my number one aim is to stay healthy, wrestle as much as possible. Obviously this is my job, so the more I can wrestle, the more I can provide for my family. So yeah, pretty much the goal is the same as it has been for a couple of years now. Just stay healthy and wrestle as much as possible.
And you say you've been wrestling for 18 years, and I've just come into your wrestling academy today, and the enthusiasm when people are in here, it just pours out of you. It's giving something back to those younger wrestlers, something you're very passionate about as well.
Yeah, like I've been teaching since 2006, which is like a long time. I've trained a lot of wrestlers who have become full-time wrestlers now. All Star Wrestling as a company is one of the companies that can offer a wrestler a full-time living in wrestling right now. So it's a good opportunities. I'm always enthusiastic when my students are enthusiastic. The more enthusiastic the student is, the more enthusiastic I seem, you know. If they're not willing to put the work in, then I sometimes struggle to get motivated, because why should I work if they don't want to work? But my students here at the wrestling school, some I've had for many years, including Terence here, is one of my best, by the way. I've really landed on my feet with the students I've had since 2006. I've got obviously Tony Storm is one of my female students. She's a champion all over the world now. She competed in the Mae Young Classic. She wrestles in Japan. She's a champion for Stardom. One of my other students, Zaya Brookside, now wrestles in Stardom too. So yeah, it seems like my students are doing really well at the moment. So I've got a lot to be proud of. But it really is like, if the students are enthusiastic, then I'm here. I want to teach as much as they want to learn.
And that seems like a good place to come to you. No? One second, I'll just